Hey, what's going on, guys? So, as you know, Bandai makes amazing model kits. They've been doing it for a long time. They've gotten really good at it. But as great as their model kits are, I mean, they're not always perfect. There may be minor things, nitpicks that we have about different kits. I asked you guys your opinions on what you would like to see maybe changed, added, or subtracted from different kits, what changes you would make if you could make suggestions to Bandai. And that's what we're going to take a look at in today's video. I'm going to go through some of your guys' replies and see what some of them that I might agree with, or just some of them that seem to be common ones amongst you guys. And the other thing that, of course, you guys know about Bandai is that they're a Japanese company like today's sponsor. So today's video is going to be sponsored by TOKYOTREAT and Sakuraco. So we'll take a look at these boxes here real quick before we get into the video. So TOKYOTREAT is a monthly Japanese subscription box where you get a bunch of the latest, most exclusive, limited edition, and seasonal Japanese snacks. As you can see, the Halloween theme for this month's box. Each month's box comes with a special bag of Kit Kats. This time it's sweet potato flavored Halloween break. We got a TOKYOTREAT limited edition Tokyo layer loaf maple pumpkin bread. Loads more snacks, all Halloween themed. You always get a pack of instant noodles. In this case, it's some yakisoba, very nice. And one of my favorite aspects is always the drink. In this case, it's a jelly sparkling grape drink. My other favorite aspect though really has to be the included booklet, which gives you all the information about all of the snacks. So it's got information about different cultural things, in this case about Halloween celebration in Japan, and then information about all of the snacks that you have included inside. If you guys are interested in different aspects of Japanese culture, these booklets are just really cool. Not only just learn about the snacks themselves, but just all the cultural and historical stuff that's covered in these. And as for Sakuraco, this is a monthly Japanese subscription box where you'll receive a bunch of more traditional and authentic Japanese artisan type snacks. Sakuraco partners with local Japanese snack makers to continue to share Japanese culture through their snack traditions. Another really cool thing you get in each box is this really cool art card. In this case, it goes with this month's theme, and that is Ibaraki Harvest. So just like with the TOKYOTREAT box, with this box you also get a booklet which covers all sorts of information about different culture and historical aspects about Japan related to the theme for the month. And then of course there's information about all of the included snacks in there as well. I honestly really do enjoy these booklets, guys, but I will say that I really do hate natto, so that'll be interesting. Aside from all the carefully curated awesome snacks that you have inside here, I love the really traditional looking stuff. One of the aspects you get in every Sakuraco box is some tea. In this case, it's Ibaraki Sencha with green tea, so that should be good. And the tea pairs with all the snacks in here. But you also get a special piece of tableware. Now in this case, it's in this beautiful blue box, and inside we have a surprise tableware this month. Mine is this beautiful blue and white small little dish here. I really like this, perfect for sauces and things like that when you're eating some Japanese food. I don't know about you guys, but personally, instant ramen, not really one of my favorites, instant noodles like this, but I always like to try it out, and this one being like black Halloween theme looks pretty cool. Yeah, it's alright, but let's go ahead and try washing it down with the jelly sparkling grape soda. That's a lot of jelly. I don't know about you guys, but I usually like jelly stuff in drinks, like soda and stuff like that. This one has quite a lot of jelly in there though. And of course, have to try the Kit Kats here. Sweet potato. I love sweet potato and sweet potato flavored stuff, so this should be good. Yeah, as expected. It doesn't really taste that much like a sweet potato. It just kind of tastes like a sweet candy anyway, but it's really super good. Now in the Sakuraco box, we got some strawberry tarts. This is one of my favorite things to be included in these boxes. I love these. Just this little tart here with some real strawberry jam on it. You also always get at least 1 or 2 packs of jelly in there. In this case, it's Ibaraki melon jelly. Of course, I don't have a spoon here at the moment, so I'm having to eat like an animal, but really does taste like melon. It's amazing. As for the tea, very nice. I don't care usually so much for like green tea stuff, but this one, I mean, it's good. And lastly, just because I hate natto so much, I'm gonna try the Parinto natto snack, and we'll see how bad it is. Though I'm expecting it to be not that bad. It basically just tastes like a salty snack. Let's see. I can already smell it. Alright, so anyway guys, the rest of these snacks I'm going to take home and share with my wife and kids. They're going to love trying out all these different snacks. But if you guys want to try out either Sakuraco or TOKYOTREAT box, you can use the links down in the video description. Use the code ZAKU to save $5 off your first box. I honestly really enjoy getting these boxes each month, checking out the booklet, trying out all the snacks, the drinks, and everything included in there. And I just really like the mission of the company, trying to share Japanese culture with people around the world through snacks, which everyone loves. But alright guys, let's get into the topic for today's video. I can see there's at the moment 436 comments on this post, so thank you guys all so much for weighing in with your opinions. Obviously we won't have time to get through all of them in today's video. I can see though that a lot of you didn't read the post, and that what I asked you guys was If you could get Bandai to change something about their Gundam models, what would it be? Add something, change something, or do away with something, which I can see I had a typo. And then in brackets it says, as in, including water slides, fully articulated hands in every MG, for example, not to do with availability, such as P Bandai or Gundam-based limited releases. And I know that there's a lot of comments on here, people saying something about that they don't want any more P Bandai, something along those lines. That's not what I was asking you guys about. I understand that a lot of people don't like P Bandai. What I want to know is what you guys would like to see Bandai change about what's in the box, not necessarily where the box is available. See, Timeless is a great one here. Bring back the consumer side transparency about what is being reprinted. As someone who doesn't live in Japan, being able to see the printing schedule was of use in planning out purchases when the kits eventually made it here, and generally gave a better sense of Bandai's current priorities. Now that they've stopped publishing what they're printing, I have no idea what's coming until maybe a week before it hits the storefronts. Yes, I understand this is a concern. I do understand kind of both sides of it as well. As I've mentioned in the past, Japan is still struggling quite a bit with the pandemic, and I don't know exactly how much that's affecting Bandai and their production, but I think a lot of that has had to do with the fact that their production has been a little bit interrupted, and we've seen evidence of that, and even with like the delay of the RG God Gundam, although we don't know exactly what the reason was for that, but other things that were supposed to be reprinted and not. And I think what it comes down to, and this is something that Adam and I have talked about a lot when we do our live streams on the USA Gundam TV channel, is what Bandai will do is put out a list of kits that are planned to be reprinted, of maybe like 100 kits. Of those, they'll maybe actually reprint maybe 70 of them, so they just don't really know. And I think just ahead of time, like too far ahead of time, they maybe don't know, or I don't know, how they go through the selection process. And maybe it's based on what stores are ordering, and the kits that maybe get the fewest amount of orders are the ones that get cut from the list. And so I guess maybe that's why they don't put that list out publicly anymore, because if they put that list out publicly and like the one kit that you're looking forward to getting reprinted is one of the ones that gets axed from the list, then you get a lot of upset customers about that, like, hey, I was planning on buying that kit when it came out, but now I'm not gonna be able to get it. But I think this does also cause some trouble with the scalping, because if we know ahead of time what kits are gonna be coming out, what kits are gonna be reprinted from Bandai, then the kits that are maybe kind of rare or low availability now that are being scalped for high prices, they won't be able to overcharge that much for them if it's kind of common knowledge amongst people, if anybody who checks that list, that that kit is going to be reprinted like 1 or 2 months later. So rather than paying a high price for it now from somebody trying to make the most off of it, you could just wait a couple months and get it for just, list price when it comes back out. So I agree, it was nice when Bandai was putting out the list. I kind of understand why it's a bit complicated to do so at the moment. Maybe they'll do it again in the future, but I would assume probably not. Holden has a couple of things he mentioned here. Number one is a set of fixed pose hands for every MG, open hands, saber holding hands, trigger finger hands, and closed fist. I definitely agree with this. This is something you guys hear me talk about all the time. This is not something I would like to see only with MGs, but basically any kit that they put out, even with HGs. I mean, to add a couple more hand parts onto a runner, it's just a couple of parts. It's not something that's going to add to the price that absorbently. And a lot of times the runners are like an HG kit, even an HG kit or any kit really. Every single runner is not a full-size runner, so just adding a bit more to the runner. Obviously that does add a little bit to the cost of the production process for Bandai, but I think it would be so nice to have just more hand option parts included with kits. So many HG kits only come with 2, 3, maybe 4 different hands in a box, when I don't think it would be that much to ask for, 6 or 8 in a box. I don't think it would make a big difference. And again, same thing goes with master grades as well. I personally don't like fully articulated hands on master grades, or even perfect grades, honestly, for that matter. I would just like a set of fixed pose hands to be included in there as well, even if it's like a larger MG that has a set of fully articulated hands and then a set of fixed pose hands, I think would be perfect. His second point is shoulder joints on pegs instead of ball joints, preferably engineered in the same way as the HGC 0079 ground Gundam type. Yeah, with HGs, it is kind of a bit of a mystery why Bandai keeps kind of going back and forth. It really just depends on the kit, which style of shoulder joint they go with. Yeah, I would agree though that definitely the ball and socket joint style shoulders are probably the worst. Kind of depends on what's going on around the joint a little bit, but yeah, definitely pegs and like a more, very slightly, if we're talking about HGs, very slightly more complicated joint system there in the shoulder would definitely be nice, rather than just a simple ball and socket. Third point here, shorter beam sabers. I feel like the blades are too long, especially for modern HG blades. Yeah, this is another one that really kind of depends on the kit, depends on the size of the mobile suit and kind of just what the mobile suit is. Some mobile suits have beam sabers that, like if you saw in the anime, the effect is quite long. longer, but some of them are shorter. I think Bandai basically relying on like 2 or 3 beam saber runners that they have that they just reuse for kind of everything is a little bit unfortunate. Sometimes you would like them to be a bit more appropriate to that particular Gundam, but if you have a pretty sizable collection, that means you probably have some leftover beam saber effects lying around somewhere. If there's a kit that you want to have a smaller blade, maybe you have one that you could take from a different kit or something. But yeah, I agree that it would be nice if all the beam effect parts were made specifically for each Gundam for each release. And number 4 is one that I've definitely talked about a lot as well, is better shield connections. Always give the choice of mounting them on the back of the forearm or the side of the forearm. The Gundam Mark II is the best example of this. Yeah, I know, you know, if you're going for like anime accuracy or like line art accuracy, some Gundams or some mobile suits carry the shield and it's attached onto the back of the arm. That's how it is, that's how it looks. But when it comes to the actual kit, that, I mean, I'm sure you guys have experienced this, that makes it really uncomfortable to try to do like proper posing when the shield is on the back of the arm. You kind of have to do like one of these or like one of these, and it just kind of looks kind of weird. It feels like it's just much more comfortable when you're trying to pose the kit when you can have the shield on the side of the arm. So yeah, just having the option of doing either or. Just again, this is a matter of just including like 1 or 2 extra pieces maybe in there just to make the shield mount just a little bit different, or give you optional shield mount piece. Brother here chiming in on the example that I gave about water slides, saying that water slides should be included standard for at least RGs, MGs, and PGs. I would even say even with HGs, even if it's just like a couple of markings, unless it's a mobile suit that is like really doesn't have kind of markings on it, in which case, I mean, I don't really know what that would be, but I mean, I guess I could see some examples where it just like wouldn't have any kind of markings in there. But what the general consensus is about Bandai including water slides in their kits is I've not really heard it that much to do with the cost of it, really, to be honest. It's just more of the fact that Bandai usually intends their kits to be beginner friendly. So what I would say is for them to do like what they do with some of the Star Wars models and some of like the Macross models from Bandai, is include both stickers and water slide decals. So we know that they do that for some releases, but for whatever reason they don't do that with most Gundam kits. I mean, there's a few here and there, and they would be like some of the larger, some of the more expensive models. But yeah, I mean, could definitely see that RGs, MGs, PGs, yeah, for sure to include. Again, I would say both sticker decals and water slide decals for, you know, whatever you're more comfortable with, whatever your preference is. But even HGs, I mean, I think it would be nice. Astray here brings up an interesting point, saying that as someone who's new to painting, I appreciate when the kits are easy to take apart and alligator clip. He says, I want some tech that makes this even easier without the need for a part separator. They've gotten really good at it recently, but still room for improvement. Yeah, this is a difficult one because, yeah, sometimes you're building a kit and when you go to take it apart, you run into areas where it's really difficult to take things apart, or really difficult to take things apart without breaking anything. Or you have some parts sometimes where when you do go to paint it, there's not really any good place to clip your alligator clip on it, and so it just makes it a little bit more tricky. Most of the time I think these are things that are relatively easy to work around, and I think if Bandai tries to go too easy with disassembly of their kits, then, you know, then they run into stability problems. So that's some of the things that people will often bring up with kits that like have a lot of C-joints on them, like the 30 Minutes Missions kits, like some of the simpler HG kits like the Leo and the Maganak. Some of these kits that are very easy to take apart and very easy to put together, but with that, I mean, you do have a little bit more stability issues maybe with sometimes. I don't know, it's not really ever been that much of an issue for me, but it is something that I do hear people mentioning about from time to time. But I wouldn't really ever anticipate Bandai really to put that much consideration, especially that much really careful consideration into how the kit is going to be painted, because I think Bandai, well, again, one of Bandai's main priorities is just always going to be making the kits very beginner friendly, and that doesn't necessarily mean painting. That means they just want the kit to be able to be put together really nicely and get the best finish without having to do anything extra on it. Saku-chan mentioned a few things here, but the first point I like is don't use the same frame for different kits like the RG Shinanju. I think that was a very unfortunate example where that happened. I think generally Bandai doesn't really reuse frames for a lot of kits unless it's like a variant of a kit, like for example like the 2.0 Zaku 2 frame has been used for many different master grade Zaku kits, but you know, that's pretty understandable. In that case, it totally makes sense to reuse that frame. Reusing the RG Gundam Mark II frame for the RG Shinanju definitely was not a thing that made sense, and it's something that a lot of people complained about, and so I think that Bandai probably learned their lesson. I wouldn't expect them to really do that again. in the same manner. But I mean, reusing frames for master grade kits, again, like reusing the master grade Gundam 2.0 frame for all sorts of different master grade kits, not only variants of the Gundam. I think that makes sense, and usually it's not reusing the frame in its entirety. It'll be like reusing 80% of that frame, and then like 20% is new parts and things that you're gonna have to change for that specific release. So reusing the same frame for different kits, yes, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but I wouldn't really expect that to be something that should be too much of an issue going forward, because it seems like Bandai probably learned their lesson on that one, I would hope anyway. Here's another one that I saw mentioned by a few of you guys here from Benadryl. He said spares of easily broken or easily lost pieces, and some kind of base for basically everything. So yeah, this is actually two different points, but spares of easily breakable parts. This is something I saw a few of you guys mention about the V-fin specifically, people asking for kits to include like 2 of the V-fin parts just in case you end up breaking one. That's something I could definitely agree with, especially again if it's for an RG kit or like an MG that has like a really thin and fragile V-fin. I think it would definitely be, you know, again, not adding that much cost to add an extra one of those onto the runner just in case. And this actually does fit really well with Bandai's beginner-friendly philosophy, because again, if you're thinking that like if it's especially a young kid, someone fairly inexperienced with models, someone maybe not quite so careful, putting the kit together, breaking the V-fin, you can definitely see that happening, and having an extra one in the box would surely be helpful. So yeah, not only V-fin, but again, just any easily breakable or easily lost pieces, yeah, especially for like really tiny pieces, including a couple extras, like if it's a part that you need 2 of this really tiny one, just putting 3 on the runner just in case. Other model companies do this. Kotobukiya, for example, in some of their kits, when they have really tiny pieces, they'll usually give you an extra one just in case you lose it. So it's something that I would agree, it would definitely be nice if Bandai would do that. And then as far as including a base, yeah, I could agree that most cases I would say it would be nice if some kind of base was included. Then again, they do sell action bases separately, so if they give you an action base in every kit, then just there's not really any point for you to buy their action bases. So maybe not like a full-on action base in every kit, but something like the very simple kind of HG base that you get included with HG kits that are especially not like ground type mobile suits, but space type ones that just kind of make sense for them to be like in an aerial position. Including some kind of base in more kits, I would generally tend to agree with, especially HG kits. The first part of Chubb's comment here is another one that I've seen a couple times scrolling through here, is about polycaps, and this is one that I expected somebody to, at least someone, I expected a lot of people to mention about this, polycaps one way or the other, but he said getting rid of or getting less polycaps in kits. This is something I've talked about many times. I know it's a big issue for a lot of people. They either like kits to have polycaps or they're very impressed by kits when they don't include any polycaps. For me, I really just don't care about it either way. As long as the kit, you know, is stable, you know, it does what it needs to do, it's not too loose, not too tight, that's hardly ever the problem. But as long as the kit looks good and is able to do everything that it's supposed to do, I personally really don't care if it has polycaps in it or not. The good thing about having less polycaps when you're painting is that if there's any polycaps in visible areas, as you guys may have known if you've ever tried painting, polycaps, the paint doesn't want to stick to polycaps well. So what you'll have, and this is like a really common area, is like in the shoulder, like we were talking about earlier with the ball and socket joints in the shoulders, that socket is usually a polycap. There's usually at least a little bit of that kind of visible like in the gap between the torso and the shoulder, and a lot of times you'll notice like when we're moving that part around, the paint is going to chip off there really easily. So like if you look at people's painted builds of HG kits, if you see like a polycap, just a little bit of the polycap there in the shoulder joint, or in other parts, like sometimes in like the feet or in certain areas where you might see a little bit of the polycap, and you'll notice like the paint is chipped off there. That's just because that lacquer paint and even enamel paint, acrylic paint, I don't know what type of paint does want to stick well to polycap material, but yeah, that is one common issue, I guess, that has to do with polycaps. That would be nice when you don't have them. Otherwise, generally, I don't really personally have too much preference about that. I kind of don't really mind, but it does seem like Bandai is using polycaps much less than they did a long time ago. They still use them pretty predominantly, especially in HGs. You know, it's pretty common for most HGs to at least use some polycaps, but it's definitely less than it was before. SNS Warrior here making mention of something that I've seen in here a few times as well, is about undergating. He said, I wish undergating was the standard for most kits. As it stands, even the more expensive kits need a lot of cleanup. I don't want to have to put in extra time and effort just to hide poorly placed number marks on an otherwise well-engineered kit. This is another one, it really, for me, I don't really care about it all that much. For plated kits, if it's any kit that Bandai, maybe like the initial release, like take the HGUC Hyapshiki Revive kit is a really good example of this, where The standard release version of that was not plated, but that kit obviously should be, at least all the armor parts should definitely be undergated, because you know that they're going to make a plated version of it later. So even if the initial release is not plated, if it's something that Bandai is planning on making a plated version, or possibly making a plated version of it sometime, then yeah, definitely, especially the armor parts, like I said, anything that's going to show especially should be undergated. Yes, I can agree. As for stuff that's not going to be plated, for me, I really don't like undergating. I understand why some people think that it's a little bit easier for cleanup. I personally find it more work, because you have to cut twice. You have to cut the nub this way, and then you have to cut it the other way, whereas I just find it much easier to just remove the nub when it's just on one surface, if that makes sense. For me, that's how I find to get the cleanest finish on my kits, is just on a regular nub, usually undergates. It's just, for me, that's more work. I don't know about you guys though. I mean, I've heard from a lot of people though that they find that undergating is easier for cleanup, so I don't know, it just kind of depends. I don't necessarily think that it makes sense to make it the standard for all kits, but certainly for some kits. And I don't know what it adds to the production process, planning the runners and producing the runners, the actual undergating. I don't know if it has any effect on that. I don't know that much about the fine details of the production of the models. I would assume it's not that much of a difference, really, like a very negligible difference in terms of the production of the kits, but it would be interesting to find out for sure. My 5-head here with an interesting one, I can relate on that, but he said dry transfers for all MGs. They're more difficult to apply, but they look better than water slides. I would agree with that assessment, that they're more difficult to apply than water slides. Yes, they look better. Yeah, basically, yeah, I would agree. Although I personally really don't like doing dry transfers, just because that difficulty factor. Water slides, I think they're just so much easier, and the difference in how they look is pretty negligible. Yes, dry transfers will definitely look nicer, but I mean, only if you're really looking really close. I mean, I think you can still get a pretty good looking finish with water slides. I'm usually plenty happy with just having my water slides, but I would say that this is something that, again, I think would be nice to just have as an option in kits. So going back to the good old days when you used to get some in master grades, so maybe having like your full sheet of stickers, and then having that exact same sheet as water slides, and then having like a smaller sheet of dry transfer decals, just especially for like the larger logos and stuff like that. I mean, that's something that I think would make sense. I could get behind that for sure. Miguel here with an interesting one. He thinks that they should bring back the mesh pipes and rubber inserts and the optional vents and handrails. It wouldn't hurt to bring them back, much multimedia in a kit. As for the rubber inserts, I'm not exactly sure what he's talking about, whether it be like the rubber inserts like to cover the joints, like something like the original Master Grade Alex has, or if he's talking about like the rubber inserts for like the bottom of the feet. I'm not too sure about that. But as far as the mesh pipes, I'm kind of on the fence about this. Like certain kits like the Mark II, the Gundam Mark II, there's different versions of that kit that use mesh pipes for like in the legs, and I think that does look pretty good. But this is another thing that I would really prefer if, I think like the best possible option would be just if they gave you options for that, a plastic piece or a mesh pipe piece, because the mesh pipe I think does look really cool, but if you wanted to paint that a different color, it's not as easy to do as if it was just a plastic part. I think that'd be pretty simple, so it would be nice if they gave you different options for that, I would say. And as far as the optional vents and handrails, this is something that I know was included definitely with the original, like the older Master Grade 8th MS team releases, like the Ground Gundam, the Ground Jim, the Jim Sniper, the Easy 8, etc. I can't think of any other Master Grade kits that had these included, although I know there's probably some more. But yeah, including these tiny little option parts in there just as an extra thing just on the runner that you can opt to use or not on your kits just to customize them is really cool, and something that was really great about those kits and that Bandai stopped doing a long time ago. So it would be nice if they would get back to that, especially for the larger kits, like anything that's 1/100 scale or above. That would definitely be really nice. It's something that is included in, again, other companies and other releases do this. I think most notably like Machine and Krieger will do this. I'm sure probably different tanks and airplanes and things like that, realistic models do, but at least if we're talking about sci-fi model kits, which would be my area of expertise, I know that like at the very least this is something that is included in Machining Krieger kits. It would be nice to see them return to some Bandai Gundam models. Necro here with a point that I was actually kind of surprised that I didn't see more of. I'm sure he's not the only one that mentioned this, and that is about weapon option sets. Now I'm just gonna freestyle a bit off of basically his general point here, and that is just to say that I think it would be really awesome if Bandai would make some more weapon sets available, not just like generic stuff, but you know, just things like they've done with the HG Iron Blood Orphans line, how they made certain sets that include weapons that maybe you saw very briefly in the anime, but it didn't make sense to kind of include it, although it would have been nice to have that included with the kit, but maybe it didn't make that much sense to include it with the base kit, but then you could get it in just one of these separate option sets. And the option sets, I mean, you could use with anything, really, anything that you wanted to. If they did that more with other lines, I mean, they did that a lot with the HG Iron Blood Orphans line, but that's really about it. I mean, obviously the 30 minutes missions line has a lot of that, but I guess it really kind of depends on the series. Like, say, for example, with the Master Grade Wing kits, they fairly recently came out with that kind of weapon add-on set for the Bandai Master Grade Wing releases that was also a Bandai option set, that you could make different variants of the mobile suits just using the option sets that were there. That's kind of very different. Like if they were to make like just a weapon set available for like all of your HG Wing kits, I'm not really sure like what that would include other than the weapons that are very specifically meant to be with the Gundams that obviously have to be included with the Gundam in the box, like the scythe for the Death Scythe, like the beam buster rifle with the Wing Gundam. All that stuff would have to be included with the kit, and then other than that, I'm not really sure what other weapons they could really include. So like for that line, it wouldn't really make much sense. For like the HGUC, like 8th MS team line, it would make a lot of sense to put out like an 8th MS team weapon set that includes like kind of all the standard weaponry for those mobile suits from that series. So I guess it kind of depends. What would be nice is for them to make a few more weapon sets in 1/100 scale, because although we do have some options in 1/144 scale between the different option sets that they have for the different lines, in 1/100 scale there's really nothing much available, so it would be nice to have some more in that scale. Geek Eric here made a lot of points, some of them we've already talked about, but the first one here, fewer seam lines, of course that would always be nice. What I would say is, I mean, seam lines are going to be something, especially with HG kits, that are just kind of always going to be a thing, I would imagine. It would be nice if every kit was engineered in a way that didn't have any seam lines, but sometimes the placement of the seam lines is really suspect. Like, why would they make a seam line run right through like a very detailed area of the kit and not just make it a little bit different so that the seam line ran through an area that was less detailed or easy to glue together and easier to remove the seam line without having to do as much cleanup work or rescribing or re-adding details. I'm not really sure what the reasoning is behind that, if it has to do with the way that they have to design the parts in a certain way for how the part needs to be molded. I mean, obviously that needs to be taken into consideration, but it seems like sometimes it's just the why they placed the seam line where they did. It does seem pretty random and it's unfortunate. Alright guys, there is a lot more here that we're just not going to get to today, and some of them of course are just repeating similar points, but if you guys are interested, check out the post over on my community tab and read through some of the things that people suggested. Thank you guys again for all of your input on the topic. You know, fingers crossed maybe somebody at fingers crossed maybe somebody at Bandai will see the video and kind of pass some of the suggestions up the chain. Not to say that anything's actually going to come of it, but at least maybe they know about some of your guys' concerns and might take that into consideration for future releases. At least we can cross our fingers for some more water slides and hand option parts, maybe. But that's it for the video, guys. Thank you again to Sakuraco and TOKYOTREAT for sponsoring today's video. Definitely check the link to them down in the video description below. Check them out. And of course, the link to USA Gundam Store will be there as well. If you guys are interested in checking out any models, paints, tools, supplies, all that good stuff, you can check the link to USA Gundam Store. And just thank you guys all so much for watching the video today, for hanging out. If you have any further questions, comments about today's topic, you know, I'd love to hear it from you guys. Chime in down in the comment section below. Until next time, have a great day, guys. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.